Welcome to Military Analytics. The war between Ukraine and Russia led to the formation of a large-scale international coalition around the world. Russia's occupation policies brought countries from around the world and international organizations closer together. We had to constantly reflect on the negatives of the war, such as destruction and death. But the spirit of cooperation and alliance brought by the war is perhaps one of the rare positive elements that we can convey to you. One of the most important countries that enabled this to happen is the United States, a permanent ally of Kiev. Despite the upcoming election crisis in the country, the Washington administration has provided nearly $50 billion in military and financial support to Ukraine so far. Also, even as cold winds continue to blow between the current U.S. leader Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who announced his candidacy in the next election, Washington was able to include a brand new military force in NATO. This power, of course, was Finland, the 31st member of the International Military Alliance. Finland's accession to NATO in April marked the end of Helsinki's historic axis from decades of security neutrality in the Euro-Atlantic bloc. Fearing retaliation from Russia after joining the military alliance, the Finnish government has begun work on the construction of a 3-kilometer fence on both sides of the Imatra crossing point on the Russian border in the east of the country. We can say that Finland is now on the way to having more reliable and more independent border control. On the other hand, military cooperation between Finland, the 31st member of the North Atlantic Alliance, and the United States continues. The USA, which organizes new exercises with the new member of the alliance, continues to create cold shower effects in the Kremlin. New talks took place in the Finnish capital last week with Mikael Antal, Deputy Director General for Political Affairs at the Finnish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, leading the bilateral talks. According to the latest information, if the ongoing negotiations between Helsinki and Washington on a new defense cooperation agreement are successful, American troops may soon be deployed to bases close to Russia's border with Finland. Finnish Foreign Ministry official Mikael Antal reported that discussions on the new cooperation agreement could allow the construction of important military infrastructure on Finnish soil. The U.S. military presence in Finland, albeit only on a small scale, is an important step towards broader efforts to deter Russian aggression. If you look at the main benefits of NATO membership, it's clear that it's an alliance with the United States and the benefits that status can bring. Finland sees the improved relationship with the U.S. as the greatest deterrent benefit or increased deterrence. For Finland, it's important to have regular U.S. boots on the ground or U.S. Air Force capabilities here in Finland. These infrastructure arrangements can facilitate greater exercise and deeper cooperation between Finland and the U.S. can be a potential reinforcement in the face of any threat. Having some U.S. military equipment or stockpiles already deployed here in Finland is also something Finland is looking for. Finland and the U.S. will start formal-level negotiations next year. The draft that will be prepared before these talks is expected to be discussed in the parliament. Antal also said that it's too early to talk about certain projects regarding investments to be made in Finland, and that one of the projects could be a maintenance center to be established for 35 warplanes. He mentioned that the agreement will increase Finland's last NATO membership, and that the agreement will ensure smooth cooperation with the USA in all security situations in a short time. The USA is also doing an extra study with Finland on dollar cost averaging. Antal underlined that the proposed U.S.-Finland dollar cost averaging studies allow soldiers to enter the country, stay on the ground, and store supplies and possible infrastructure investments in advance through the funds given to the Pentagon by the U.S. Congress. On the other hand, it is known that the U.S. administration is working to make similar agreements with Denmark and Sweden. The U.S. currently also tracks dollar cost averages with Sweden and Denmark. Such agreements will deepen the close security partnership, enhance cooperation in multilateral security operations, and together strengthen transatlantic security, State Department spokesman Ned Price said in January. Russia is very uncomfortable with this situation. As a result, Russia tried to maintain control of the buffer zones between the West and Russia in the most cost-effective way, rather than preventing NATO enlargements. Russia is trying to break the siege in the Baltic and Black Sea with the accession of Romania and Bulgaria to the alliance. A great risk arose for the Russian presence in the Black Sea. This risk stems from the fact that new NATO member states are an entry point for the alliance due to their geographical position rather than their military contribution to the alliance or the strength of their armed forces. Considering that Turkey is a NATO member and the possible alliance membership of Ukraine and Georgia was mentioned at the 2008 Bucharest summit, the risk of Russia's Black Sea Navy being closed to the Black Sea is very high. The main factor determining Russia's steps in the region is to eliminate this risk, as it is known. One of the obvious reasons for the war is to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. If this does not happen, Russia will want to close Ukraine's gates to the Black Sea. Putin will either weaken Russia further by failing in Ukraine or take control of Donbass, making Ukraine a country close to the Black Sea. Especially lately, the application of these two countries to join NATO brings along a radical change in the previous neutrality policy towards the alliance. For this reason, the steps taken are seen with historical value. The fact that Finland is a NATO member means that the alliance's presence in the Baltic, North Sea, and Arctic is strengthened, while Russia is limited in the North Sea, Arctic, and Atlantic connection. It is unthinkable that Moscow would not be disturbed by NATO's freedom of action over the United Kingdom, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. In addition, the increase in the number of NATO member countries in the Arctic Council means that there is no buffer zone on the Russian border on the West-North line. For this reason, the Kremlin threatened these two northern countries with the use of force when the first rumors of membership came. As such, Russia seems to have withdrawn into a cautious wait-and-see policy. The Kremlin explained that the membership of these two countries would not make a big difference for Russia, but they would somehow respond elsewhere if the NATO military presence was deployed in the two countries. According to experts, this statement can be read as an acknowledgement that Russia does not have the power to prevent NATO's expansion rather than a search for collateral. As a result, Finland's accession to the alliance doubled the length of Russia's borderline with NATO. This will force Russia to increase its military infrastructure on its northwest borders. Russia, which was hit hard against Ukraine by failing to deliver what was expected, seems to be even more difficult after this time. The Russian leader is now locked in the great offensive of Ukraine. Vladimir Putin, who is worried about losing Crimea first, needs to get out of the Ukraine impasse by developing new strategies. If it continues like this, it means that Russian President Vladimir Putin's Ukraine operation will be one of his hands. Even the political existence of the Russian leader is at stake. Ukraine, on the other hand, will sooner or later return to its former peaceful and free days. The war took many lives, but in the coming days, the sun will rise again with hope, and the new world will say hello to safe days. Russian leader Vladimir Putin is aware of the impact on the battlefield of the new military equipment that the West has recently supplied to Ukraine. But the situation of the Russian army leaves Putin quite helpless. This is because the Western weapons supplied to the Ukrainians are much more powerful than the Soviet-made ex-military equipment used by Putin's army. In fact, the USA comes to the forefront as the party that provides the most effective weapon systems to Ukraine. The Biden government is very sensitive about military aid to the Ukrainian military. As you know, the United States has provided nearly $50 billion in military and humanitarian aid to the Ukrainian army so far. But recently, a surprise weapon has become the focus of the agenda, which was included in a recent military aid package sent by U.S. leader Joe Biden to the Ukrainian military. In fact, this surprise military equipment provided by the Washington administration to Ukraine was used for the first time in Bakhmut, which has recently become the epicenter of clashes. Yes, you heard right. It turns out that the Ukrainian armed forces are using a new US-made secret weapon for the first time in a long time on the Bakhmut front lines. The images of the attack operation in which this secret US-made weapon, which is as effective as the M982X caliber bullet for the 777 155mm howitzer, were viewed by millions of social media users. Let's move on to the details of this striking news right now. The open-source military intelligence group Ukraine Weapons Tracker has released a video showing the first use of a US-made guided bomb equipped with JDAM Joint Direct Attack munition kits in Ukraine. The video brought to light the striking offensive operation of Ukrainian forces on the Bakhmut front line in Donetsk Oblast. The footage shows that 4 Bu-62s were dropped into a large area lined with buildings next to what is claimed to be the Russian Army's ammunition storage point in Bakhmut and the Russian military preparation area. It was clearly visible that several bombs had hit this damaged building group in Bakhmut, which was used as a military base and ammunition depot by the Russians. This stunning video was recorded by a Ukrainian military drone hovering over Bakhmut. Incredible footage recorded by the Ukrainian drone also revealed that the clashes in Bakhmut resembled the Battle of Stalingrad. The use of the US-made JDAM-guided bomb by the Ukrainian forces also made the Russians very worried because, if you remember, the Russian armed forces claimed that the Ukrainian army was using JDAM bombs on the Bakhmut front line. Since these claims could not be proven, Ukraine's use of JDAM-guided bombs remained in the background. However, thanks to these striking images, it has now been revealed that Ukraine has resorted to brand new military equipment to seize Bakhmut. So how was this stunning operation conducted in which Ukrainian forces used JDAM bombs in Bakhmut? First of all, 2 Ukrainian jets equipped with the JDAM kit appeared in the skies of Bakhmut. As we mentioned, a UAV of the Ukrainian army was closely watching this operation. A pair of supersonic Mikoyan MiG-29s from the Ukrainian Air Force fighter jets launched 4 500-pound Bu-62B JDAM glide bombs from the skies of Bakhmut towards the Russian arsenal area. The target of the Ukrainian jets equipped with JDAM kits was the cluster of buildings just a few blocks from the front line in central Bakhmut, the site of Russia's winter offensive in eastern Ukraine's Donbas region in almost a year of war for Bakhmut. It came as an exceeding surprise to the Russians that Russian forces deployed along the 600-mile front line were caught in JDAM bombs as they moved from offensive to defensive in anticipation of a final Ukrainian counterattack. The JDAM attack on this large area surrounded by buildings used by the Russians as both an ammunition depot and military base rendered at least 2 of these tall structures unusable. 3 of the bombs hit a single structure in a complex of 3 buildings. The 4th blew up the corner of a separate building across South Street. The successful attack was good news for the Ukrainian Air Force, which began receiving JDAMs from the United States earlier this year, but initially struggled to integrate them into the Air Force's aging Soviet-made fighters. If you recall, documents leaked to Playmates by a U.S. Air National Guard aviator over the past few weeks highlighted problems with the wiring that connects JDAMs to improvised masks. Apparently, the Ukrainians have solved this problem. While we weren't sure what the aiming points of the 4 JDAMs were in the last attack, the fact that 3 of the bombs hit adjacent points on a single structure indicated that at least the building was a target. Also, in the images released, the JDAMs appeared to explode on contact. This proved that the JDAM bombs in the recent Ukrainian attack on Bakhmut had simple pulse fuses rather than radar fuses that could trigger a bomb in the air directly above a target. JDAM bombs appeared from Ukrainian MiG-29s were buried underground after hitting their target. At least one of the JDAMs was clearly visible in a drone video as it dived almost vertically into its target. It was also the clearest and first ever image of Ukrainian pilots launching JDAMs as observers had largely expected. Ukrainian pilots also fulfilled their duties in this striking attack. The heroic pilots of the MiG-29 jets of the Ukrainian Air Force used in this stunning offensive operation at Bakhmut flew low to evade Russian air defenses and angled at the last second before dropping their bombs. All these critical moves were to expand the range of the munitions and give the Ukrainian pilots an appropriate angle to their target. It was a sophisticated and successful strike by an Air Force that, after 14 months of hard fighting, finally began to combine its surviving Soviet-made jets with the latest Western munitions and to implement robust targeting and armament processes. Thanks to this striking offensive operation, the Ukrainian forces also changed the general course in the Bakhmut trenches. Now, the Russians began to gradually withdraw from the trenches of the Bakhmut front line as the Ukrainian forces tried new weapons because the Russian army had neither soldiers nor equipment to lose anymore. It was, therefore, quite understandable that the Russians were withdrawing from the Bakhmut central front lines. So what are the factors that make these JDAM-guided bombs used by the Ukrainian forces special? Why are the Russians so afraid of these guided bombs? Now, let's take a look at the details of this issue. Earlier this year, the United States announced that it would provide Ukraine with a long-range GPS-guided bomb made by Boeing as part of a $1.85 billion military aid package. The name of these striking bombs was first mentioned at the time, but it's important to note that the JDAM is not a standalone weapon. JDAM, or Joint Direct Attack Munition, is a mind-blowing piece of war gear that can transform an unguided bomb into an all-weather, precision-guided munition. Every JDAM-equipped bomb uses an integrated inertial guidance system connected to a GPS receiver. The JDAM Extended Range variant can hit targets up to 45 miles away after launch from an aircraft. JDAM kits were first developed in the late 1990s and are now used by the U.S. Air Force, Navy, and armies of 26 other countries around the world. One of these countries is Ukraine. JDAM was jointly developed by Boeing and the Defence Science and Technology Corporation of Australia. It entered service with the Royal Australian Air Force in 2015. According to Air Force Technology, the ammunition recorded a system reliability of 95% during tests on more than 450 JDAMs with an accuracy of 9.6 meters. Military intelligence sources reported that in March, the first batch of these weapons was deployed to Ukraine. This delivery was relatively small, but the use of JDAMs by Ukraine has already revealed that these can pose real problems for the Russian military. In short, the Ukrainian armed forces are now much better equipped to win this war, thanks to military equipment such as JDAM-guided bombs. The intense attacks launched against Melitopol recently have prompted the Russians to take urgent measures. One of the most notable examples of this occurred yesterday. The Ukrainian army attacked Russian elements in Melitopol, and 4 explosions were reported in the past day. According to officials, the Melitopol region has been subjected to numerous artillery shells by the Ukrainian army. The attack took place in the morning hours, and a total of 4 explosions occurred in the city. Russian soldiers suffered losses, and Russian army settlements sustained significant damage. The results of one of the Ukrainian artillery attacks are clearly seen in the video footage shared on social media, showing the impact on an unidentified object. A powerful explosion followed by a massive fire took place, which was not explained by the Russian authorities. Reports from the field indicate that a Russian military base near the multidisciplinary college was partially destroyed as a result of the bombing in Melitopol on the 5th anniversary of Victory Avenue. However, there have also been demolitions in other Russian settlements in the city. The constant attacks by the Ukrainian army on Melitopol are aimed at clearing the region from Russian occupation and continuing the preliminary preparations for the Crimean offensive in this city. The liberation of a key city like Melitopol from Russian occupation will also deal a huge blow to the Russians in terms of logistics. Anticipating this, the Russian army has already implemented a series of precautionary plans. Russian troops occupying the city of Melitopol have already begun digging trenches and preparing for the siege of Ukraine. Locals are passing on information about Russian activities to Ukrainian forces. On the other side of the front line, Russian troops in and around Melitopol, one of the few major cities taken by the occupying forces in a year-long war, are preparing for defense. Russian forces are establishing 4 bunkers, including the Ministry of State Security Service, and constructing the Railway Culture House in Melitopol. According to information from locals, they are building underground facilities and setting up shelters by burying shipping containers in the ground. They are also increasing the number of personnel and constructing more fortifications in the city. As the second largest city in the Zaporizhia region, Melitopol has become an important administrative and logistics center for the Russian occupying forces. Local residents are suffering under increasingly tight restrictions, partly in response to intense partisan activity that has claimed the lives of several high-profile pro-Russian collaborators. So, what significance does the liberation of Melitopol hold for the Ukrainian army? The city will also be an important target for possible future Ukrainian attacks if the Kiev forces can retake it. Moscow's land bridge connecting Crimea to Russia will be compromised. In short, Melitopol, together with Kherson, is one of the 2 key routes to Crimea. If Melitopol is cleared of occupation after Kherson, which is currently under the control of the Ukrainian army will be able to approach Crimea from 2 directions, making it easier to liberate the region from occupation. Crimea, annexed by Russia in 2014, is a key objective for Ukraine, and leaders in Kiev have made it clear their intention to liberate the peninsula despite Russia's threats of escalation. Ukraine has repeatedly targeted Russian military installations on the peninsula with long-range attacks. In October 2022, a truck bomb reportedly exploded near the Kerch Strait bridge connecting Crimea to Russia. However, Western officials have expressed skepticism about the Ukrainian military's ability to retake the region, while others have warned that Moscow may resort to weapons of mass destruction if its control of Crimea is threatened. So, what significance does Melitopol hold for Russia? The importance of Melitopol in Russian defense planning is evident. The Russians chose this place as an administrative and logistics outpost and concentrated their supplies and personnel here. It is also vital to strengthen the city's regional connections and prevent Ukraine from advancing north. Recently, more than 50 trucks carrying Russian ammunition advanced through Melitopol towards the Zaporizhia section of the front line. Russian forces have set up training facilities in the area around Melitopol to train newly mobilized soldiers from Russia, among the 300,000 soldiers called into service by the Kremlin in September 2022 to halt the Ukrainian counterattack. Melitopol's exiled mayor, Ivan Fedorov, reported that 2 powerful explosions were heard in the northern part of the city, possibly resulting in the deaths of hundreds of Russian soldiers stationed there. According to the mayor, 2 Russian bases were destroyed, and Russian casualties as a result of the attack amounted to hundreds. However, he also stated that the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces would provide more detailed information about the attack and Russian casualties. The city of Melitopol, with a pre-war population of 150,000, fell under Russian control on February 26 of last year, just 2 days after the start of the war between Russia and Ukraine. Since November last year, Russian soldiers from the recently liberated areas of Kherson Oblast and the city of Tokmak in Zaporizhia Oblast have turned Melitopol into a military base. The Ukrainian army is awaiting new equipment, weapons, and ammunition from Western countries to commence offensive operations. Although it is no secret that both armies are short on ammunition, the situation for Ukraine is not as catastrophic as Russia's. However, the ammunition of the Ukrainian army is also considerably depleted. Additionally, not all of the tanks that Western countries have committed to Ukraine have arrived yet, and Ukraine desperately needs these tanks to launch their offensive as the winter months are slowly coming to an end. Once Ukraine receives its new tanks, the long-awaited major offensive is expected to begin, potentially marking a significant step toward ending this war.